Open market is known to be a very happy term. It is used very often here in the US and is synonymous with capitalism in general. When a market is slowly shrunken, when a few select businesses control most of the traffic and innovation, it can easily be to the detriment of whatever industry it happens to. Most of the time, this consolidation is called an oligarchy. An oligarchy means something similar to a monopoly, with the exception that the main power is split among a few groups as opposed to just one. Jumping to our issue today, many fear that this consolidation is now happening to the video games industry. Recently, the two biggest players in this space, or at least the most controversial, have been having a sort of battle over who can have the biggest acquisition over the other. At least, that's what social media makes it out to be, but we'll get back to this later. Many players on the outer ring of the issue worry that one day all games could come from just two or three publishers, leading to much more stale and less imaginative games. You may wonder why they care at all. Why put so much energy into something as unimportant as digital games when there are so much more intense problems in the world? The thing about the medium is that many of this generation, myself included, spent much of their childhoods filling all their time with nothing but games. Most young people nowadays will have some experience with them or even a favorite. On the point of that, though, there is a group opposing the worried crowd, wondering who cares where the games come from? LordsofGaming.net bring up this issue. While not being an especially reputable news source, they do bring up a good point about the issue. They say, quote, "It's getting harder to ignore the message in the tea leaves. The gaming industry is consolidating, but is that necessarily a bad thing?" End quote. In their article, they mention the larger budgets that consolidation can come with. Using Double Fine, a game development studio acquired by Microsoft in 2019. Quote, "Double Fine nearly cut the boss fights from Psychonauts 2. After Microsoft acquired them, they could fully realize their vision and make a Game of the Year nominee." End quote. They even talk on what many would consider a large problem with acquisitions: larger expectations. When a studio is acquired, it usually comes with the expectation that they always receive some sort of larger budget for their projects. That isn't always what happens. Quote, "Any executive who convinces a board to make a purchase amounting to billions of dollars is acutely aware of one thing: he's responsible for making that money back." End quote. Any money the parent company gives a new acquisition is always money they need to then make back. An article on the much more anxious side by the Washington Post talks about why this consolidation came about in the first place. Quote, "Video game companies have become hot commodities for several reasons. According to research firm Newzoo, the global gaming market will reach about $219 billion by 2024, up from $180 billion last year." End quote. The industry has become extremely lucrative, and because of that, the main way that companies can stand out has been by bringing the best games to their platforms and keeping them away from others. Worries about the issue have been spurred on by social media. Twitter especially has been the place people discuss the issue. Talking about video games has for years been many's pastime. Acquisitions, though, have had a detrimental effect on the discourse. Many have inflated enough to start infiltrating real life. Dexerto has an article about a lesser known surgeon who accidentally leaked his patient's security info in trying to prove his internet reliability. Quote, "It's not every day that you see someone claiming to be a doctor vehemently defending their console of choice. That was the case for Twitter user Sharivura, who, until recently, had doctor by profession in his bio. To prove his legitimacy, Sharivura shared a video of himself in medical garb inside of an operating room." End quote. Not only did he stop what he was doing to film himself mid-surgery, he had accidentally panned his phone over the patient's files. I think that the console warring, as many call it online, is detrimental to social media in general and tends to wipe out any honest criticism or enjoyment some may have for video games. With no obvious way of removing it, though, it seems to be something that most of us will have to end up living with. On the topic of acquisitions, I think there is good reason to limit them, if not remove them, but I see just as much reason to allow them. With the companies the way they are, it seems inevitable that one or more forces would end up controlling everything else anyway, so acquisitions at least seem to be a legal alternative that is semi-restrictable. Perhaps, if the industry were to come to an agreement on whether to continue these large acquisitions, worry about consolidation would be sated. On a current path, though, it seems, if not inevitable, then as close as we can be.